Hello everyone, today we are going to be doing a deck tech for Fynn the Fangbearer. Fynn is a 1/3 for 2 with Deathtouch. He's a human warrior, and whenever a creature you control with Deathtouch deals combat damage to a player, they get 2 poison counters. A player with 10 or more poison counters just straight up loses the game. So this is just budget mono green infect. The game plan is that this deck needs Fynn to win. Just straight up, we are going to win with poison damage, or infect damage, whatever, right? Same thing. So we're either going to swing in with creatures that have Deathtouch to either 1-for-1 our small death, like 1/1 Deathtouchers to like our opponent's guys, or we're just going to smack them for 2 infect and like 1 damage, and then that's fine, right? Because we want to kill them with poison anyway. We're already a fifth of the way there with that. So we're going to want to spread the love with a lot of kill spells to get rid of like annoying big guys that they're not going to try to 1-for-1 our small guys with. And then most of the cards in the deck either have Deathtouch or Infect. That's pretty much the criteria. It's a budget deck, so we're not going to go too crazy with anything. And the other spells and abilities that like they have are just like kind of benefit that helps them out. You'll see. So Acidic Slime, he's Deathtouch, which is nice because he comes in and he just destroys an artifact, enchantment, or land, and, you know, he's just the Deathtouch guy. Bellowing Tangleworm doesn't have Deathtouch or Infect, but he has Intimidate, and he says other green creatures you control have Intimidate, which basically says this creature can't be blocked except by artifact creatures or like basically green creatures because we're mono green. So it kind of makes our guys even harder to block, which means we're going to be getting in for more. Blight Mamba has Infect, but it has Regenerate too, so pretty good, right? Just in case someone decides to block it, it dies, no big deal. Champion of Lamhope is just kind of a good utility creature. Champion, so creatures with power less than Champion can't be blocked, and then whenever another creature enters, you put a 1/1 counter on it, so it basically makes our team unblockable after a little bit, which again is good because that's how we kill people. Core Prowler, Infect 2/2. When it's put into the graveyard from the battlefield, just straight up proliferate. We have a good amount of proliferate stuff in this deck just because once we get those poison counters on people, we're not always going to be able to swing in and stuff. So just being able to like incrementally, you know, grind those counters up is going to help us out in the long run, you know, just so we don't have to be super like solely combat like related. Spinebiter, just a 2/3 for 3 with Infect. Believe it or not, Infect doesn't have super good rates. Like again, like you look Core Prowler, it's a 2/2 for 4 that has like an effect when it dies. But again, Spinebiter is not a bad rate. 2/3 for 3, pretty good. Deadly Recluse, again, Deathtouch 1/2. The fact that it has reach is pretty much the selling point because we're not going to have a ton of ways to deal with like flyers, and I think our opponents are going to know that. So having a guy that we can either swing him like if we want, but also like leave back and be able to like block and kill big stuff in the air is good. Deathbloom Gardener is a good mana dork, and it's also a Deathtoucher. Defiler of Vigor, one of my favorite cards in this deck, just because I like these Defiler cycle in monocolor decks. So Defiler of Vigor, he basically is, he's a 5 mana 6/6 with trample, already really good, no infect or Deathtouch or whatever, but he's basically going to make all of our creatures cost, or sorry, all of our green permanents cost a Phyrexian mana instead of a green, so we can pay life instead, and we have a lot of 1-drops, you'll see. Plus, whenever we cast a green permanent spell, just straight up put a 1/1 counter on each creature we control. So again, Deathtouchers are annoying just because like they're 1/1s and you don't want to block them anyway, but now they're going to be like 2/2s and 3/3s and 5/5s, like they're going to be even more annoying to deal with. Erinus Gloomstalker, Deathtouch 3/3 for 3, good rate. When it attacks, return target land from your graveyard to the battlefield. This is just like one of those things, right, where it's like you're really running it because it's a 3/3 for 3 with Deathtouch and it's good for the deck, but you can get a land back sometimes, you know, it's just straight to the battlefield. Not a bad ability if you're going against mill or someone made you discard or whatever, right? It's a budget deck, you know, deal with it. Evolution Sage. Whenever a land enters, proliferate. We grind up those poison counters, it goes pretty quick. Fang of Shigeki, it's just a 1/1 for 1 with Deathtouch. If there's like a ton of these, like at least every Magic set gets a 1/1 for 1 with Deathtouch, and I just like this one. I know he's an enchantment, and I know it makes him easier to kill because if a spell's like, oh, you can get rid of an enchantment or it doesn't matter, right? I just like him. I like the art. And plus, since he just came out, he's kind of cheap. Glistener Elf, classic Infect card. That's just it. It's 1/1 for 1 with Infect. Gnarlwood Dryad, a 1/1 for 1 with Deathtouch. And if we have 4, Deliriums triggered, he's just a 3/3 with Deathtouch for 1 mana. So pretty good. So again, we have a lot of one mana, small guys, so we can sneak in and get easy damage fast. And this is why I was saying I like, the Defiler of Vigor so much, because these guys only cost 2 life now, and we can just keep churning them out. Halana Kessig Ranger, really cool combo with all this stuff. So I'll use Gnarlwood Dryad as an example. She is a 4 mana 3/4 with Reach. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under our control, we can pay 2, and when we do, that creature deals damage equal to its power to a target creature. Since it is the creature dealing damage, it's really dealing Deathtouch damage. So it basically just says pay 2 mana, kill a creature, essentially, because our guys have Deathtouch. Hornet Queen, 7 mana, but prefer 5 flyers with Deathtouch. I kind of like this idea just because, one, they're evasive Deathtouchers, which is what we want to win with poison. And 2, if we just live this and no one has any flyers, this is an instant, kill, because it's exactly 10 poison counters. Ichorclaw Mirror, 1/1 for 1 Infect. If it gets blocked, it gets +2/+2. So it's kind of not bad, because we're either sneaking in for 1 Infect damage, which is what we want to do anyways, or if it gets blocked, it at least pumps itself so it doesn't necessarily die. Kappa Tech Wrecker, kind of weird because we don't really ninjutsu stuff, but I guess he's there if we want to. He enters with a Deathtouch counter, and then we can just kind of get rid of that counter to exile an artifact or enchantment, which is kind of nice. So he's just he's a Deathtouch guy, we can get rid of it, and then he's just we get rid of an artifact or enchantment. Again, guys, it's a budget deck, it's not going to be that great. Kura, the Boundless Guy, big flying Deathtouch. I like the idea of this guy, mainly not for the lands, but the fact that he replaces himself, and that will make an XX green spirit or X number of lands we control. Just kind of running him because he's a 5 mana flying Deathtouch 4/4. That's pretty much it. And if he dies and we get a 5/5 in response, because again, I don't know, 5 mana, whatever. It's a good replacement effect. Moss Viper, it's a 1/1 for 1. That's really it. Mwanvuli Beast Tracker, 3 mana 2/1. When it enters the battlefield, search your library for a card. Creature card with Deathtouch, Hexproof, Reach, or Trample, and reveal it. Keyword on the Deathtouch part. Shuffle our library and put it on top. So we basically just get to tutor up whatever creature we want, because since they're all going to have Deathtouch anyway, we just get the best Deathtouch creature that we would need. Nam Renegade, again, 1/2 for 1, good rate with Deathtouch, and when it enters the battlefield, with a 1/1 counter if a permanent left, so we can do this post-combat, and we can get a 2/3 Deathtoucher for 1 mana, not bad. Okim Adversary, cost 2 less if an opponent controls a green permanent. I make these decks with the assumption that we are at a pot of 4, including ourselves, so we have 3 opponents. The likelihood that our opponent has a green permanent or is playing green is pretty high, right? So in my head, this is a 2 mana Deathtoucher for 2/3, and when it deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. So not only does it have Deathtouch, but it draws its cards when it connects. Oran Frostfang, attacking creatures you control have Deathtouch. So now Infect is good, right? Don't get me wrong, it is, right? But the fact that this, and give them Deathtouch, if we have a 1/1 with Infect, it's really going to deal 2 poison damage instead, maybe 3. I think 3, but someone correct me on the rule. In my head, since it has Deathtouch and Infect, it would count both. But either way, doesn't matter, since no one wants to block our guys anyway because they're 1/1 Deathtouchers. Whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to the player, just draw a card. It's going to help fill our hands, going to help get the board going faster. Phyrexian's Wormlord. I like the idea of this guy. So it says he is a 6 mana 4/4 with Infect. At the beginning of your upkeep, put a 1/1 green insect creature token with Infect on the battlefield for each poison counter your opponents control. I like this guy late game because we could potentially be getting 10 guys on our upkeep, which is very nice with Infect. I know he doesn't enable himself. I guess he does enable himself because he does have Infect himself, but kind of by the time he comes into play, our opponent should have some Infect counters or poison counters. Plague Mirror, he's just a mana dork with Infect. I like him. Plague Maw Beast is a funny guy because we can just sacrifice a creature and proliferate. So, like, if we find ourselves getting to a spot where, like, we can't really get in combat damage anymore, let's say our opponent made a bunch of 1/1 tokens, or, like, it's hard for us to get in, Plague Maw Beast will at least let us sack our own creatures to proliferate so our opponents still remain on a clock. Questing Beast, he just straight up is keyword soup. He's so good. Vigilance, Deathtouch, Haste, can't be blocked by power 2 or less for you magic old heads. Daunt, remember that. Combat damage that would be, basically combat damage that would be dealt by creatures you control can't be prevented. So no fog kind of effects for our Deathtouch boys. And he also just kills planeswalkers. He is a unit for 4 mana. Rotwolf, 3 mana 2/2 with Infect. When he deals when a creature dealt damage by Rotwolf is put into a graveyard, we can draw a card. So again, mainly running it for Infect, but the fact that we can just draw a card, still pretty nice. Sarth of Viper's Fang, very interesting card. So other tapped creatures have Deathtouch. When we go to combat, our creatures are now tapped and attacking, right? So we can give Rotwolf Deathtouch, even though he also has Infect. Other untapped creatures you control have Hexproof. So again, like I said, since our opponents are probably going to get to a point where they can deal with our guys, making our like Deathtouch wall untouchable with Hexproof is very, very nice. I also like the idea of Sarth going to combat and attacking, since Sarth is then tapped. Oh, it's other creatures, never mind. Doesn't matter, right? But we can attack with Sarth, and then we can pay 1 to tap her. Sorry, not attack with her. I'm misreading her. We don't really go in, right? But we just pay 1. We can untap another target creature or land we control. So if like we have like, I don't know, like some kind of like kill spell against like one of our tapped guys, or during combat, we can at least prevent it. I know I got on a sidetrack, but you guys know what I mean. Spinebiter. 3/4, 6 mana, Infect. You may have Spinebiter assign combat damage as though it weren't blocked. Basically just means we're getting in for 3 Infect every single time with him. Tajiru Blightblade, it's just a 1/1 with Infect. That's it. I like a lot of these guys. I tried to keep into more recent sets like Zendikar Rising, just to keep the price like down lower because it is budget. Urban Daggertooth, Vigilance, 4/3 for 4, great rate honestly. And then whenever he's dealt damage, proliferate. Very cool. Crank up those poison counters. Final 2 creatures. I think we have like legit 35 to 37 creatures, I'd say. Viridian Corrupter. It's basically Rexage, but with Deathtouch. Sorry, with Infect. Oh, I guess it doesn't get rid of enchantments. So it just pops an artifact, so that's fine. It's just worse Rexage with Rexage with Infect. And then we have Wasteland Viper. It's a 1/2 for 1 with it Deathtouch, which is a good rate. And then we can also just straight up discard it, pay 1, and give another creature +1/+2 and Deathtouch. So it's good, little combat trick, kind of funny. Let's go to sorceries. So the big bulk of our deck is those creatures. It's just how we win. So going to sorceries, we have Explore. It's just ramp and card draw. I just like it. Harmonize, draw 3 cards for 4 mana. That's fine, it's a good rate. Nature's Lore, I kind of like the idea of, because on turn 2, we can play Nature's Lore if we don't want to play Fynn. Or ideally play Fynn, but you know. I like the idea of maybe turn 3, Nature's Lore, get a forest that's untapped, and then just play like one of our 1 mana guys right away because the land ender's untapped. I kind of like that idea. Overrun, straight up just a kill spell pretty much at this point. Giving all of our Deathtouch trample +3/+3. If you're not familiar how Deathtouch and trample works, pretty much Deathtouch means that 1 damage from this creature is considered lethal. So when you have Deathtouch and trample, as long as that creature is assigning 1 damage to that creature, since that's considered lethal, all of the remaining damage will go through. So let's say, for example, I have a 4/4 with Deathtouch, right? And my opponent has a 5/5. I go in, I attack, I assign, and they decide to block my creature with their 5/5. I assign 1 Deathtouch damage to their guy. That's considered lethal, and then 3 damage will run over, so they still take 3. So they're still taking Deathtouch damage, which is good because it's trample, and that gets poison counters. Predatory Focus, kind of like Overrun, but with extra steps. You just may have creatures you control deal combat damage to the defending player as though they weren't blocked. I guess it's like a little bit better than Overrun, just because like it doesn't matter if they block him or not. I guess it leaves more damage, but again, I don't know. I guess they kind of each have their own benefits. Overrun does buff. Doesn't matter. Either way, you're getting a lot of damage through these two cards. Smell Fear is a really cool card I like. So basically, first off, proliferate, right? Real big deal in this deck because we crank up poison counters. Then target creature you control fights up to one target creature you don't control. This is basically, we toss one of our 1/1s with Deathtouch into our opponent's Scaries thing, and it kills it because it has Deathtouch. And then finally, Triumph of the Hordes, big beautiful on its own page. Unintentional, I just put 3 on a page. Triumph of the Hordes, until end of the turn, creatures you control get +1/+1 and gain Trample and Infect. Someone please correct me, but I'm pretty sure that if a creature has Deathtouch and Infect, it would still count as Infect damage, and it would count the 2 things from Fynn. So pretty cool still either way. Generally just says kill an opponent. Who's ever played against Triumph of the Hordes? You guys know, it says kill an opponent. Running out of breath. Instance, Beast Within. 3 mana, get rid of something you don't like, anything, it's a permanent. And then they get a beast. Who cares about the 3/3 beast? You just got rid of something super scary. Bite Down, 2 mana, target creature you control deals deals damage equal to its power to target creature or planeswalker you don't control. So it's basically like fight, but our creature doesn't die, and since it has Deathtouch, it's just gonna kill whatever it fights. It's not gonna lose. Gaia's Gift. I kind of like the idea of this, right? Gaia's Gift, 2 mana, put a 1/1 counter on target creature you control. It gains Reach, Trample, Hexproof, and Indestructible until end of the turn. I like this idea because since we need to keep Fynn alive, it mainly keeps him alive, but it's also kind of like a funny combat trick because, like, since our guys have Deathtouch anyways, and it'll just give him Trample, we can kind of like attack him without really having to worry. I don't know. In my head, it keeps Fynn safe, and then it's also like a combat trick. I like it. Heroic Intervention. If someone nukes, it really hurts us, and we won't like that. So, we don't want them to do that. Keep our board safe. Master's Rebuke. Target creature you control deals damage equal to its power to target creature or planeswalker you don't control. Again, it's just like another kill spell where like their creature dies because we have Deathtouch and our guy stays the same. Then we have Ram Through. It's basically Better's Master Rebuke, but if that creature had Trample, all that excess damage is dealt to them. Doesn't really matter too much, just because Fynn cares about combat damage and not just damage. So, I mean, a little extra damage is fine, but, you know, it still gets the job done. And then finally, we have Return of the Wild Speaker. I kind of like the idea of it. I don't think we're going to be drawing a ton of cards with it, but just like instant speed, hey, your guys get +3/+3, fun combat trick until end of the turn. I kind of like it. And then we have Rapid Vigor, which is basically a worse version of Heroic Intervention, but again, regenerate each creature you control. Hopefully someone doesn't play Wrath of God, but it just keeps our board safe if someone has like even like very worse, someone's like, oh, I'm going to like Doomblade your guy, and you're like, no, he's fine actually. So again, it just keeps creatures safe. Go into Artifact, Contagion Clasp. 2 mana, when it enters, put a -1/-1 counter on a creature. Hopefully that can kill a bird or a mana dork or whatever, right? But we're mainly running it just because it says pay 4 mana, tap it, proliferate. Again, it just keeps our opponents on a clock. Emerald Medallion, we're mono green, making our green spells cost 1 less, a-okay. Heraldic Banner, I like as a card. We're going to say green, our creatures get +1/+0, and then it's also a mana rock, so instead of having like 1/1 Death Touchers, at least we have 2/1 Death Touchers, so if like we do have stuff with Trample, it can still go through. Lifecrafter's Bestiary. I like this card in mono green. I just think it's neat. Basically, start of our turn, scry 1, and then whenever we cast a creature, we can pay 1 and then draw a card. I think this is pretty good, just because we have a lot of very low-cost boys, like a lot of the 1/1 Death Touchers for 1. And just like paying an extra green to draw a card, I think is pretty good. Lightning Greaves, slap them on Fynn, keep them safe. Ronus's Monument, pretty big in this deck, and I just realized I didn't make the cards the same size. Doesn't matter. Ronus's Monument, green creatures cost 1 less. Whenever you cast a green creature, target creature you control gets +2/+2 and Trample. Again, that has Deathtouch, Trample, Deathtouch. Great combo. Helps us get through, crank up poison counters. Finally, it's Soaring. Guys, please run Soaring in your decks. Like, I know people say Soaring's an overpowered card. It really isn't. It's fine. Run Soaring. Don't be one of those guys. Enchantments. Family Favor, I really like the idea of. So 3 mana, whenever you attack, put a shield counter on target attacking creature. If you look at the bottom text, if a creature with a shield counter on it would be dealt damage or destroyed, just straight up remove the shield counter. So it lets us swing in with a guy really safe. Worst case scenario, they block, no big deal, our guy's okay, and their creature probably dies because it's Deathtouch. Or whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, remove a shield counter from it, and if we do, draw a card. So I like the idea of this just because like we can attack in, right? It's either we attack in, someone blocks, their creature dies, our creature's fine, good with me, or we attack in, right? No one wants to block it because their creature's going to die, ours is going to live, and then they take 2 poison damage, and then we draw a card. Pretty good. Garruk's Uprising, mainly the big effect is creatures you control have trample. I'm not super worried about drawing cards with this. I really don't know how we can. There are not many big creatures, but just creatures you control have trample, very good. Glorious Sunrise is a big mess of a big mess. So 5 mana enchantment at the beginning of combat, choose one. Creatures get +1/+1 trample. That's why we're running it. Main reason, swing through, kill someone. Target land basically taps for a bunch, draw a card if we control a creature power 3 or greater, or gain 3 life. So we're using it for the big effect. If we need land or ramp, we got the ramp. If we need a card, we got the card. If we need life for whatever reason, we can have it. Why not, right? But we're mainly running it for the creatures get buffed and get trampled. Guardian Project, probably the most expensive card in the deck. Whenever a non-token creature enters the battlefield, if it doesn't have the same name or anything, you guys know Guardian Project. Basically, whenever a non-token creature enters, draw a card. All it is. We have a lot of low-cost boys, so we can kind of keep funneling a lot. Primal Rage, just straight up creatures you control have trample. That's kind of the big thing. Deathtouch trample is the main, way we're getting through. Rancor, kind of continuing on with that. Enchanted creature get +2/+0 and has trample, and then whenever Rancor is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, return it to our hand. So it's nice. We can just keep putting it on a creature and swinging in with it, and then just getting Rancor back. So it always, like a Deathtouch creature, always has +2/+0 and trample, and Deathtouch, like we put it on one of our small guys, and it's fine. And then finally, Sylvan Anthem, pretty cheap card. Green creatures get +1/+1. I know we have some artifact creatures, but the big bulk is green. And then whenever another green creature enters, scry 1, good card advantage. Let's go to non-basic lands. Guys, this is it. All our non-basic lands right here. Access Tunnel, ideally to make one of our Deathtouch creatures unblockable. That's really all it is. Blighted Woodland, I just kind of prefer it to Myriad Landscape, just because, one, this land enters untapped, and that's kind of it. And then we can sacrifice Blighted Woodland and get 2 cards to the battlefield tapped anyway. So I guess it's kind of basically one and the same, but I just like that you can use this right away. And then Karn's Bastion, taps for a colorless, doesn't matter. We're mainly there to proliferate. We are running 32 forests for a total of 35 lands. Again, you guys saw our mana curve. It's pretty low, fairly low. We don't have a ton of ramp, we don't have a ton of rocks, but I think because of the natural low curve of our deck, I think it's fine. The deck is about $123. That's my definition of budget, is basically around $100, and I think that's around $100 enough to just call it $100. I think it's tough because you look at a lot of these cards and they're 10-cent commons, but you probably just have them laying around. Or you can really just make this deck out of stuff you have laying around. Fynn's actually very, very cheap and affordable. And the average CMC is 3.03. That's why I think 35 lands is fine with that. And that's it. Thank you guys for watching. Like, subscribe, and comment what you want me to do next. It really does help me out when you guys do all of the above or even just one of them. Finally, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.